In Genesis chapter 11, and this is part 3 of this series I'm making of church hierarchy, it says that the whole earth was of one language. So it was of one boundary. There was no way you could leave, for example, America and go into Canada, who has British accents, or leave America and go into Mexico and there be people who speak Spanish. There was only one language and there was only one people. Everyone was of one nation, because in Genesis chapter 11 you have people building a capital or a head or an empire, and that would be from, if you read the lineage, Ham, Cush, and Nimrod, and this is where people first began to gather around hierarchy, because they were gathering around fires, and whoever knew how to make fire would be the boss, for example. So whether we look at that as literal fire or intellectual fire, you could look at that as a way of resurrection of what happened with Adam and Eve, because they began to rely on their own intellect, which is exactly the problem that happened in Genesis 11, rather than scattering over the face of the earth as God had commanded them to do in Genesis chapter 1, to be fruitful and multiply. So what we find is that as soon as they begin to build this, God says no, and he separates these people who are following in this idea of industry and relying on their own needs and their own creations to create something that was not supposed to be created in the first place. And that's what we find happening. For example, a Baptist doesn't care whether or not you're a Christian. He cares whether you're a Baptist. A Pentecostal doesn't care whether or not you're a Christian. He cares whether or not you're a Pentecostal. A Church of Christ person doesn't care if you're a Christian. He cares whether or not you're a Church of Christ person. So establishing your own denomination, let us make us a name, it says in Genesis 11 verse 4, and it says men of renown in Genesis chapter 6, and these are men of name, people who make their own names to be celebrated, to be shining above others in their own character, to take on flattering titles that they've earned in worldly colleges or seminaries, and it has nothing to do with the ordination or the answering the same things as God, or being synergistic with Christ, working with your works, or being in Christ. People who do such things are creating their own systems, as in Genesis 11 or in Genesis chapter 3, where Adam and Eve started following the serpent. So in Genesis chapter 11, we see they're relying again on their own wisdom, and they're following the serpent. So this is going to be a part of the deconstructing the hierarchical system of the church, which is a delusion and an illusion that's created by wordplay and buzzwords and these just created mechanisms of man in the industry of man, not of God. So, all right, I hope that this helps, and we'll see you in the next video.